So I'm just going to start as a disclaimer. There's absolutely nothing in this video new that I haven't already done, that hasn't already been shown before. But, and usually I don't like to do the same thing over and over without any kind of variations. But somebody asked me if I could do one of these same way that I did previously. And I figured, you know what, why not? I'm going to see how long it takes me to do. And this was kind of the result. And I figured, if I'm going to do the same thing over and over again, then I may as well see how quickly I can, turn it into a game and see how quickly I could do it. And this was kind of the result. So what you're looking at here is several hours worth of footage. It's all condensed into about 7 minutes. And going through the one-to-one footage was pretty excruciating. Even when I'm looking at this at, I think, like 2,000 times normal, it seems like I'm moving really, really slowly. So we're starting here with the battery tray. First we're loosening up the flywheel cage and flywheels and some of the LED supports. And that just gives a little bit of wire. There we go. I clipped out the battery tray. We're going to cut out the end piece, and that's going to get glued into the shell. The rest of it's gone, and it looks pretty stock when you take off the battery cover. So that goes in there, CA glue, it's Loctite. You got to chop out that little bit of the ribbing there. That's to get wire relief for the 12 gauge wiring on those 65C batteries. I'm cutting out the inductors here and loosening up the motors, popping off the flywheels, and using the knife to cut the glue that's holding them into the tray. And you can see that I popped off the end bell there. So that was a little bit of a hiccup there. Kind of futzed around with that a little bit too much. And eventually, though, that came out without any sort of pounding or whatever. Just cut the glue out. That's free, dremeling the little ribbings to allow the aftermarket motors to fit in there smoothly. And there's the fitment and a little more rib removal. And we're doing a little bit of cleanup there. And everything is more or less back in place. Sans wiring, doing a little polarity test to make sure that we've got the positives in the front, the negatives in the rear. Marking, and that's kind of important later, and you'll kind of see why. And when I do this the next time, and I kind of would have liked to have done it this, but again, this was the whole idea, was just to kind of gut through it as quickly as possible. So that means not changing anything around. So that's removing the magwell lock and the jam door lock. But in the future, and you can see how long this takes to remove all the ribbing to get that micro switch to fit in there perfectly. And what I'd like to do in the future is just do the MOSFET modification, so you can leave the stock switches in there and still use the high amp battery without causing any damage to the circuitry and without adding any resistance. So you can see that's still being fit in there. And one thing about these blasters is, with the AR-15 grip, it's slimmer than the Strife and a little bit bigger than the Rapid Red, but still enough space for that switch, but not enough to leave the rev lock in there. So there's just not enough space in there. So that would be another advantage of using the MOSFET solution if you want that trigger lock in there. But one thing that I found is that like the Modulus ECS-10, the Star Wars blasters have the improved trigger pull, so it's really smooth, even without the grease that they put in there. Alright, you're seeing that we're using the 16 gauge wiring. That's another thing that you'd be able to eliminate if you use the MOSFET solution. I just removed the thermistor board, and again, measuring, test fitting. You can see there's a little bit of modification done to the shell for the wire relief there, and that is more or less back. And you're going to see that that little silver post was just removed, and we're going to take the splitter board and use that to hold the wires in place. It's another disadvantage of using the 16 gauge wiring is it can interfere with some of the mechanisms if you don't hold it down properly. Alright, so we're moving on to the sound card. It's just positive and negative lead. We're going to reuse that one thermistor. I think it's a thermistor. It could possibly be a really small capacitor, but I'm going to go with thermistor. It's not 100% necessary to reuse that part, but it does give you a little added insurance protection for the capacitors on the sound card. And since there's no harm in using it, since it's not going to make it any less loud, since we're only using that marvelous half-watt speaker, there's no reason not to leave it in there, unless you're just feeling, I don't know, a little lazy, feeling like leaving it out there. Use the heat shrink. Now again, that's short protection. And then we're going to trim the leads and prep them for wiring them into the XT60 connector, along with the 2 wires coming from the flywheels to the micro switch. So you're going to notice we're going to have black and black going into the flywheel motors, and that was just more of a aesthetic thing, and plus I had more black wiring because a little bit of it's going to be poking out. It's going to be visible through the shell after it gets cut, because these are 180 motors, so it won't fit without modifying the shell. And again, there's no difference between any of the coloring wires. If you want to use lime green wire, or all pink wire, or whatever, that's great. Just make sure that you know your polarities and where all your signals and grounds are going to. Alright, so we're prepping the XT60 connector here, and making sure everything has the heat shrinking, again, short protection, which is more important with the high current batteries. And again, the leads from the sound card and the leads from the flywheel and micro switch are going into the XT60 connector. And a little more soldering going in there. And looks like the circuit's just about done. Remounting the IR LEDs, and that was a quick function check. This is a center punch to give us a starting point for the pilot holes. So we're going to start with small pilot holes, and then we will use the bore drill to increase the size of those holes. And what this is not showing is the little bit amount of extra drummeling and filing that goes into making those circular holes more rectangular to fit the external dimensions of these 180 motors. And these are FVJs, and these are a little bit slower than the Elite darts. And I think those are also old darts that I'm using. You can see the shavings that they're leaving. These are the waffle tips, and the waffle tips, which I like these because they're a lot more accurate, and they're actually quite heavy, like 1.33, 1.35 grams, which is 0.3 over the Elite darts, but great accuracy, and as you can see, velocities aren't greatly affected. So as far as experiments go, not too bad. Doing the videoing, it does add a little bit of additional work when you're working on the electronics, but overall, not a bad little experiment.